Oh my god, I look kind of cute. Okay.
Stepping on the moon, back home where we're from, digging your company.
What's up guys, welcome back to another mystery video on my channel. So today I'm going to be reviewing. Also, if you see me like move my hands a lot, it's just because I just got my nails done for like the first time in like a year. I'm kind of geeked, so just ignore that. So today we're going to be talking about the Papin sisters, or the Papin sisters. A lot of people say it a lot of different ways. I've watched a lot of videos, documentaries, and I've just researched this a lot. I researched this like over a week ago, so my brain may be a little bit fuzzy, but I know that I only have one other mystery video on my channel, but I've researched like a couple, I think like 4 or 5, and this one by far out of those it was just the most disturbing, and it was just really weird. It stood out to me, and I thought I should tell you guys the story because I saw Bella Fiore do a video on it, and her video was really good. It was really detailed, and this was just like a story that mostly stood out to me. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking about this. I just want to clarify, because in some of the pictures that I'm going to show you guys, it only has 2 of the Papin sisters. There's actually 3 of them. I actually didn't know this until I started researching it myself, but it's really weird because it's kind of like on and off, and it'll talk about the eldest sister and then the middle sister, and then like it won't talk about the eldest sister at all and talk about the youngest sister and the middle sister. So yeah, I don't know why I thought I should say that. Okay, so this story takes place in the 1900s, so it was like not that long ago, but it was a pretty long time ago where everything was literally so different. Their parents were Clemence and Gustave, and before the Papin sisters, any of them were even born, they were already like having a troubled relationship, because there were rumors going around Le Mans, which is where they lived. There were rumors going around that she was having an affair with her boss and basically cheating on Gustave, and Gustave, he was like desperately in love with her, and he just didn't want to believe the accusations and the rumors. So he kind of just like brushed it off. They were kind of already like a troubled family. Like you can tell Clemence, she was just very distant from her family. Like even her husband Gustave, or later her husband, because they later got married, but she was just very distant. She didn't seem interested at all in her family, or even being a mother later when she had kids. And she was just, they were just really bad parents, like both of them. You'll see later in the story, but I just want to point that out. So like I said, there were rumors going around that Clemence was having an affair with her boss, and Gustave was so in love with her that he just brushed it off. He just gave her the benefit of the doubt, and just he didn't want to believe it. He just denied everything. In October 1901, their firstborn child was born, and because of the circumstances, they later got married, because it just didn't seem right to have a kid and not be married. And plus of the accusations that she was having an affair, they wanted to quickly get married so that like the accusations would stop and the rumors were gone. Amelia Papin, the firstborn, she was born on February 1902. First of all,
how are you pregnant for 5 months?
Shortly after Amelia was born, Gustave was still suspicious to see if Clemence was still having an affair, and he just wanted to test it like for himself. So he took a job outside of Le Mans, which is where they lived at the time, and he was trying to take her away from that town to see if the rumors were true and to see how she would react, basically. Okay, this actually wasn't like shortly after, this was like 1 or 2 years. So basically Gustave announced that he wanted to take a job away from Le Mans. Clemence actually threatened to commit suicide if he made her leave Le Mans. So basically the rumors were true, and that just basically confirmed all the accusations, and Gustave, he didn't want it. He wasn't with it. Eventually they ended up moving because Clemence, she came to her senses and she just realized that they had to move. So they moved outside of Le Mans, and basically that's when Clemence, she started showing like really bad mentally unstable conditions, and she just had no affection, no love for her family, neither for Gustave or Amelia. So she just like, she was not affectionate, she was nonchalant, she was emotionless, and she was a really bad parent, her and Gustave. Gustave eventually got fed up with how he was being treated by Clemence. He didn't leave the family, which is really dumb, but he became a really bad alcoholic, and he just turned to alcohol for everything, and it made him a worse parent than he already was. So then in 1905, Clemence actually had another kid, despite how she treated Amelia and how she didn't really care for her kids or her family. She had another kid named Christine and quickly gave it to Gustave's brother, which was her uncle, for about 7 years, or great uncle, I don't remember. Then in 1911 she had her last kid, which was named Leah. I'm pretty sure Leah and Christine, they were 6 years apart, and then Leah and Amelia, they were 3 years apart. Amelia had been living with Clemence and Gustave this whole time while the other kids were being born. As soon as Christine was born, she was already handed over, so it's basically just Amelia and then Leah. Shortly after the last kid, Leah, was born, Clemence had actually discovered that Gustave had been molesting and raping and just like touching Amelia. He was just doing a bunch of really nasty things to her. I don't know if it was because of the alcohol or just because he wasn't doing it to Clemence, I don't know, but Clemence found this out. She divorced him, and because she was such a bad parent and just such a bad person, she didn't divorce him because he was molesting his daughter. She divorced him because he cheated on her, and it was a way of punishment for cheating on her with her daughter that was literally 11 at the time.
Hold up, what?
Basically, Clemence blamed Amelia for this whole situation. She said how she was disgusting and how she was the one engaging it, and she was the one who wanted to have sex with Gustave. This is so disgusting. Like, this is like the worst part. No, actually it's not, but this is a really bad part of the story. I feel like because it was in the 1900s, they probably didn't have any, like, probably not so much of like punishment. Okay, so I just woke up and I look a mess, but basically what I was trying to say is that, like, in the 1900s, it wasn't as important to society, I guess, as it is now, because a lot of people, like, that's really, because it was the 1900s, I feel like people didn't really care that much, or, it just wasn't as important to people as it is now. I just wanted to say that, because I feel like you can't really understand what I was trying to say, but... So after this, Clemence basically decided that she didn't want Amelia anymore, and she was just so disgusted with her and hated her so much. So she sent her to the Bon Pasteur Catholic orphanage, which was basically just a place where you get trained to be a nun. I'm actually not sure about that part. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, please, because I don't know if that's what it is. Okay, so I think this is like one of the last parts where we hear about Amelia. She was kind of not in the story for the rest of the time, but she later became a nun. She served the rest of her time at that orphanage, but I'm not sure. Shortly after that happened, Clemence took Leah to where Christine used to be, and she took Christine out and put her in the same orphanage that Amelia was in. So Leah is with the great uncle and great aunt, and then Christine is at the orphanage, and so is Amelia. While Christine and Amelia were both at that orphanage, they got really close, obviously, because that was like their only family. That was the only person they really were obligated to get close to. Had never really talked like how they did at that orphanage. Like, Amelia and Christine, they were separated for most of their lifetime. Shortly after Christine was born, she got sent away, so she couldn't really ever talk to Amelia. They were so young. I think Amelia was 11 and then Christine was like 7 or 8. They were so young to be sent away like that. But when they got closer, obviously Christine wanted to be like her older sister. She wanted to follow in her footsteps. She wanted to do everything that Amelia was doing because that was her only family she looked up to. Clemence actually stopped that. She didn't let it happen because she said that apparently Christine was smarter than Amelia and she had more potential and she could pursue a better career. She was just overall better than Amelia, and she was just so much smarter, and Amelia was normal and just had the bare minimum. So she was downgrading one of her kids. Shortly after, Christine wanted to be a nun, but obviously her mom didn't support that. And shortly after she got pulled out of the orphanage, she became a cook to support her lazy ass bum mother. Clemence was so selfish. She literally wanted all of Christine's money for her. She wanted all her success for her, and the only reason why she didn't let her become a nun and be with Amelia was for her. The whole time Christine worked as a cook, she didn't get to keep any of her earnings, any of her money. It all went to Clemence so she could spend it on herself. At this time, I don't think Gustave was in the picture at all. I'm not sure. I didn't really get this in the information, but actually like 1 or 2 years later, Leah had to go back into Clemence's custody because the great uncle died, because he was obviously really old. He wasn't just her uncle, he was her great uncle. She went back into Clemence's custody and she sent her to the same orphanage that she had sent Amelia and Christine, but later pulled her out so that she could go to work and support her and just take both of their money, take both of their income, and be a bum ass mother. So during this time that Amelia was still in the orphanage, Christine and Leah, they would never really stay in the same place for a long period of time. They would keep having to switch jobs and just switch places, and they never really got to stay in a specific place. Clemente would keep moving them works because she would find another work with better pay, another work with better pay. Like, she would just keep trying to take their income and just use their kids for their money. It's also said that Christine was kind of rude and kind of blunt, and the only time I think it affected her work, she got this job at this one place, I think she was cooking, and they eventually fired her because she was just so rude and so blunt. And that's all I heard about that, but I just thought I should let y'all know. But at that point, Christine and Leah were working together all the time. Like, every time Clemente moved Christine, she moved Leah with her so that she could kind of take her under her wing and teach her everything she knew, because Christine had all this potential. They got really close. Every time they had free time, they would hang out with each other. They were basically their only friends. Like, they were just each other's friends. They spend their time out doing anything else but hanging out with each other, so they were really close. But while Leah was still working at whatever work they were in, whatever place they were working at, Christine actually got offered a job to work for a retired lawyer and his family and basically be their maid and their cook. They were known as the Lancelin family. It was a mom, a daughter, and the husband, so it was just a family of 3. It was really small. At first, they didn't really like Christine, obviously, because they said she was rude and she was really blunt, but she did good service for them and she did everything she was told to. So eventually she convinced them to let Leah work for them as like their sub maid, I think it was called. Basically, Christine was like the main maid and then Leah was just like the sub maid. Like,
What? I got me a meal. Oh.
So basically the madam, I'm just gonna call her that because I didn't remember her like whole name. It was Madam something, but just know that that's the mom. The madam, she was just really nitty picky and just kind of like bossed them around a lot. Obviously that was fine because they worked for her, they were getting paid by her. She just never wanted them to sit down and have a break and rest. She would always just look for more things. She would reach, like she would stretch to look for something wrong with their cleaning or their cooking, and if it wasn't good enough or if it wasn't up to her standard and she just didn't find it good enough, then she would start like pinching them or she would start like slapping them. It didn't go to that extreme until later in the story. Her abuse had just started at this point when Leah started working for the family. Because it was a full-time job, they worked for 14 to 16 hours a day and only got like 8 to 10 hours of sleep. They had this little dungy, dirty, like they had a whole mansion and gave the 2 maids a dirty room. Everything was just low quality. It was nasty. They didn't really mind it as much because like at least they had a place to stay. They didn't want to be with Clemente, rude ass. If this disgusts you, I'm so sorry. Like, sometimes when I hear people eating like on camera, it makes me... And honestly, the Lancelins, they weren't really that strict about where they went. They weren't really that territorial around them. Like, they let them go out whenever they wanted, but they just chose not to because they had each other. And later revealed at like the end of the story, this is kind of like, this is why I think that they got so close, and because they were so like not intimate with each other, but they were just like really close, like closer than Christine had been with Amelia. So yeah, they didn't go out that much. Sometimes they would dress up and get ready to go to church on Sundays, but other than that, they just had a routine. They would get up and then they would clean for 14 to 16 hours, clean and cook, you know, do whatever Madam wanted, and then they would go to bed, and it was just like that. So around this time, they had been working for the Lancelin family for about 3 years. First, obviously, Madam, she just wasn't familiar with them and she just didn't really like them as much. She got a bad impression, but she started warming up to them and she became like a mother figure to them, and they started getting really close, and it was like they were actually a part of the family. They just got really close and it was literally perfect. Like Christina and Leah, they didn't even see Clemente as a mother figure because of how poorly she had treated them. Even though they weren't living with Clemente, she still ordered them to send her their paycheck. When Madam found out about this, she told them not to. She encouraged them to just keep the money for themselves, and they did because they saw her as a mother figure and not Clemente. So it was good for a while, but then it just took a really sudden turn and Madam started treating them so bad, and I don't know where this came from. All the research that I found, it just didn't, like, there was no reason why she just took a sudden turn and just started hating them again. It just changed her whole outlook on the sisters, and nobody knows why. This is when her abuse started getting really bad. She would hit them, slam them into the wall, she would pinch them, and she just became really abusive and aggressive. I don't know if the husband knew about this. I'm pretty sure he did, but it didn't say. So this was around 1933 when they had worked for the Lancelin family for about 6 years when it started getting really bad. Like the physical abuse. So after about 2 years of this, Leah and Christine, they decided that the next time she tried to hit them, they would take it to the next level. Nobody knew this until like the end of the story, but basically they said they wouldn't stand for it anymore. They didn't want her to do that to them anymore, and they wouldn't stand for it. They didn't want to be treated that way. Like I said, this was 1933, and this was when Christine was already 27 and Leah was 21. So they had like a pretty significant age gap. It was like 7 years. So by February 1933, Madam and her daughter Genevieve, they were going to meet the boys out. The boys being the dad and I think his stepson. So they were meeting them out to eat dinner. Madam and Genevieve had been out the whole day, so the Papin sisters, they were just at home chilling, you know.
Oh, big chilling.
So originally they were supposed to meet the boys out for dinner, but they came back to the house for some reason and they found that the power was out. It wasn't that unusual just because like it had been out like 2 other times that week, so it was just like another event that happened. And plus back then in the 1900s, they didn't have like these advanced electrical systems, so it was like whatever. But Madam reacted to this so horribly. Like she acted like this was like the end of the world. At this point, Madam was just screaming, yelling, screaming at everybody, yelling at the Papin sisters. She was just infuriated for no reason.
Why are you acting brand new?
So obviously Christine and Leah, they already knew what was gonna happen. They knew that they were gonna start to get physically abused again because Madam just wanted to have somebody to blame. So as soon as Madam was coming towards Christine, Christine grabbed a jug that I think was on the counter. She just slapped her head with it and knocked Madam out. So Madam was on the floor unconscious when Genevieve, her daughter, obviously came to her mom's side and was trying to protect her and was just yelling at the 2 girls. That's when Amelia and Genevieve got in a fight. I honestly don't know how old Genevieve was at this point. I'm pretty sure Amelia was older than Genevieve just because Genevieve was her daughter, so I'm not sure. But so I'm editing this video and it's really annoying because I keep saying Amelia and I mean Christine. Because like I said, Amelia is like not really in the store anymore. She's at the orphanage chilling like a villain. But whenever I say Amelia, just know that I mean Christine, which is the second daughter, and then Leah is the youngest. So I'm sorry if I confuse you guys because I don't know what I'm saying in this video. At this point, Amelia had it. She was tired and she just wanted everything to be over. She just wanted them to be dead. She wanted everything to be over. When she was fighting Genevieve, she literally took her bare hands, you guys, her bare hands, and gouged Genevieve's eyes out. Like literally while they were fighting, like she was alive, she was conscious. And it was so nasty. Like at the end of the story, like the eyeballs were in like different places of the house. It was so disgusting. She literally had the eyeballs in her hands and just threw them. Genevieve obviously fell to the ground. I'm not really sure what happened after that, but as soon as Amelia did that to Genevieve, she ordered Leah to do the exact same thing to Madam, who was unconscious on the floor. Obviously Leah looked up to her older sister and did everything she said, so while she was doing that, Amelia went to go get a hammer and a knife. Amelia and Leah, they began to start torturing them. Like they weren't completely dead obviously, so she was grabbing the jugs and just kept slamming their heads, and with the knife she would slit their thighs, slit their arms, slit like their abdomen area. It was so nasty. They just repeatedly did that. They cut them all around their body. They just kept slamming their heads into the walls, and with the jug their head was literally draining blood. And so when they realized that they were both dead, they kind of started to like prepare them to be cooked, like as if they were getting prepared to be cooked. I don't really know because they were both cooks, so I don't really know like any of the philosophy that went into this, but it was just really nasty. Also, when they realized that they were both dead, they still began to keep cutting them. They lifted up their skirts and cut their butts, started cutting their thighs, their feet. It was just so nasty. And then to finish it off, I guess, they used the blood that had drained from their heads when they were hitting their heads with the jugs. They had used that blood and poured it all across their body, on their skirts, on their clothes, on their face, on their hair. It was so nasty. It was reported that it was used as some type of sauce to like finish the meal that was being cooked or being prepared to cook. That is, so after that they literally didn't clean anything up. They didn't do anything with the jugs. They didn't do anything with the knives. They literally just got up, went to their little dungy little room, got ready for bed, and I guess they locked the door and they were just in their nightgowns, you know, chilling like some villains. They were literally just acting like it was this casual normal day, like they was feasting on some humans for fun. They was doing that on the regular. It was none major, you know. But like I said, the girls were supposed to meet the boys somewhere, but when they realized that the girls weren't coming, they came back to the house. And I guess Amelia and Leah, they like locked all the doors to the house. They locked all the windows, and when the boys got there, they saw that everything was locked. So they had to call the police to investigate the scene, and they had to open the doors, like literally force the doors open. He had literally walked in on his wife and daughter being covered in their own blood, being cut up everywhere. Their their butts were like out. Reported that it was the most disgusting murder. They had literally, their face had been deformed, like they were unrecognizable. They had been hit in the head that many times. They had blood covered in their face, blood everywhere, blood in their mouths. They saw the eyeballs on the floor. They saw their teeth literally laid out on the floor. They saw where the blood was coming out of their heads. They literally saw everything. It was so disgusting. As investigators and police, they had to take pictures of the scene. But obviously, because it was the 1900s, it was considered really rude. It wasn't respectable to take pictures, even if they're crime photos of girls with like their skirts up. So they had to like pull their little skirt flap down, and they took crime pictures. It was so nasty. I don't know if it's like considered rude that I put this on here. If you guys want to search up the crime photos that they took, just look up Papin sisters crime photos, something like that, and it came up. It's literally so nasty. Like the quality is pretty bad, but you can basically like see what was going on. Since they had walked in at complete surprise that they were dead, they obviously didn't expect the Papin sisters, Leah or Christine, to be alive. They thought that they had got murdered too because they didn't know who had done it. Obviously the cops and the investigators, they came down to investigate and saw that the door was locked. I don't know why they didn't just like force the door open, but they went and called a locksmith so that they could open the door. When they finally opened the door, they just saw the two girls huddled together on the bed, like holding each other in their nightgowns, and they just looked so scared but innocent at the same time, as someone reported. They had found all the bloody weapons, like literally I think they were holding them, or they were just like laying on the bed. Like the Papin sisters did not try to hide it at all. They knew what they did. So they arrested them like on the spot, and they pled guilty. Pretty much knew that they were gonna get caught, and they knew that they were gonna get sent to prison. They told them the whole story of like how they had been treated, how they killed them, like everything that happened basically. So when they were separated, it had a really big impact on Christine. She was like literally mentally unstable. Like she tried committing suicide continuously. She tried gouging her own eyes out. She tried banging her head on the wall to commit suicide. She tried starving herself. The prison had had enough of it, and they didn't want that to happen, obviously, so they decided to give them an arranged meeting together, obviously supervised, but just so that they could talk together, catch up or whatever, because Christine was so involved with her. Another thing that is so crazy to me was that it was reported that they actually had a sexual relationship and they were sexually involved. That's why Christine was so attached to Leah. Like from reports that I saw, it didn't seem like Leah was as much attached to Christine as she was to Leah, but I think that's why this separation caused such a big impact on her and made her literally not want to live anymore. So after the meeting, they went back to being separated, and after she started doing all these things like trying to commit suicide again and trying to starve herself, doctors were called in to determine Christine's mental and physical health, and just like they were basically trying to see how involved her and Leah were and how sexually involved they were. Obviously Christine was the dominant one. Like Leah looked up to Christine. She did everything Christine said, saw her as like a dominant figure basically. So it was also confirmed that they were both held accountable for their actions. I don't know why this was like a part of the story, because obviously if she's 27 and she's 21, this shouldn't have really had any determination. Like obviously they were old enough to see what they did, what they were doing. That was literally incest. Like I'm disgusted. So their first trial was in 1933, and basically the court determined that Leah would only get 10 years. She only got 10 years because it wasn't under free will. Honestly, I think they should have got the same amount of time just because they did the same crime. It was not only Christine and it was not only Leah. They did it together. They were partners. So I think they should have got the same amount of time. I don't think a 7-year difference matters. I'm back again. Okay, so basically what I meant by like free will, I guess, is that Christine was the one that was like leading Leah and telling Leah what to do and like guiding her. They were basically blaming Christine for the whole thing because they said that since Christine was older, she had like more authority over Leah, and Leah wasn't under free will, I guess. So yeah, I thought I should clear that up. And then Christine was sent to death, but then they later changed it to like a life sentence. I don't know how that makes a difference, but I think death means just like a life sentence as well. Once they had this trial, this made Christine like so much more dramatically depressed. She continuously got so much more depressed, so they eventually moved her from her regular prison to a mental prison. 4 years later, in 1937, Christine had actually died of cachexia. Oh my god, okay. Cachexia, I think that is cachexia. Basically it's where you're like wasting away and you have extreme loss of weight and muscle and you're just like wasting away. Like obviously had an eating disorder, and that was her way of killing herself. Like I said, Leah only got 10 years, so once she got out, she lived with her mom, Clemence. Died much later. I think she died around the 2000s, or she died in the like 1990s. So yeah, that's the case of the Papin sisters. I think this case was so much fun to research, and it was just so much it was just so interesting because like I've never heard any type of stories like this. It was just really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Be sure to comment more stories or just cases you guys want me to research and make videos about. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace. I have tacos right there that I've been waiting to eat this whole video.